Okay, now we're out here for our test ride and we've got a guest tester who shall remain nameless. But you can see his riding gear is a little bit in contrast with some of the other bits. So you've got a Kabuto FF5 latest generation helmet, 5 gloves and XPD boots. And then you look at the retro leathers. Now those leathers were bought by our nameless tester when he was 21 in 1987, the year that this bike came out. And now they've been expanded a couple of times, but he's quite proud of the fact that he can still fit into them. Now, get on and show us your stuff. This is Honda's NSR 250R, the MC16 model. Now it was the first NSR 250R. It was released in late 1986 in Japan for the 87 season, and it replaced the outgoing NS 250R. And pretty much it was a complete replica of the GP bikes. Now, for this first model, everything was new. There was basically nothing left of the old NS 250R except for the Nickersell line cylinders. And first up it came out in this colour, Fighting Red. Then later that was enhanced by the blue and white rarer colour scheme. Now sitting behind the fairing here is a nifty little 250cc liquid-cooled V-twin two-stroke. Now it had crankcase reed valve induction, which was unusual for the time because most other two-strokes were piston ported. And induction was done via 2 key and flat side carburettors that sat up behind the rear cylinder and fed directly into the crankcase. And just like its GP counterpart, the engine was housed in an alloy frame, a twin spar alloy frame, which really was at the cutting edge design for the time. Now also mimicking the GP style of the time, the 6-speed gearbox was cassette style, which meant you could pull the gearbox out the side without having to pull the whole engine apart. And the crankshaft was only available from Honda as a complete unit, so you couldn't buy bits individually. And come, close to 30 years down the track, that can cause a few issues for the restoration of this sort of bike. But there are some aftermarket stuff or items available for the engine. The MC16 NSR 250R was Honda's attempt to outgun the Yamaha TZR 250, and it had the looks, it had the 3-spoke wheels, it had an alloy frame, and it had the power to match the TZR. And let's talk about that horsepower for a second. Now it had 55 horsepower, which made it really competitive with not only the TZR, but also some of the other Japanese two-strokes like the RG250 Suzuki and the KR250 Kawasaki. And in Isleman TT Formula 3 trim, the bikes made 70 horsepower. And she would have been a lively little beast around the TT course, that's for sure. Now bikes like this, a 250cc two-stroke motorcycle, are basically banned from learners these days, and pretty much for good reason. But back in my day when I was younger, they weren't. Now you could still buy one of these from memory and ride it around, just like you could a Yamaha RD and then RZ and so on. And the funny thing is for me now, I never rode one of these back when I was a young bloke. I had a Yamaha XS250 4-stroke twin, which dead set would not pull a sailor off your sister. Then for some reason I bypassed these bikes and I went to a big Suzuki GSX, Ducati Dama, all that sort of stuff. And I think that really centered around where I was growing up as a kid, as a young bloke, because there was guys 2 or 3 years older than me, and they weren't riding these sorts of bikes. They were riding the Z1R Kawasaki's, Katana 1100s, Yamaha XS 1100s, big bikes, because in those days, in the 80s, if you had your full car licence in New South Wales, you could go and get your L's on a motorcycle and ride whatever capacity bike you wanted. So I was a bit tainted. And after riding one of these now, and I'm pushing nearly 50, I really wasn't missing out on a whole lot of fun. of got me a little bit into these 252 strokes was a Yamaha RZ250 I was riding around on recently, and I really loved it. It was a good bike. I think this NSR is a bit better. It's got plenty of room for a guy my size, which is surprising. The suspension is even up to the task of hauling me around, considering it's probably designed for someone 20 or 30 kilos lighter. The brakes are good. The handling is pin sharp, really. You put it wherever you like. And it accelerates like a maniac, and it just put a smile on my face every time I've got on this bike. Now, in only a couple of years' time, you can have this bike on classic or historic registration in Australia. And the MC16 NSR is a very rare beast in Australia, and most, if not all, would be imported from overseas, like this one. It's a Japanese import. Keeping one on the road is pretty simple, really. It's all about parts supply. They are simple to work on, and you're not going to take this to your local brand new Honda dealer. They probably won't have any interest in it. But if you take it to a bike shop where the people are used to working on older bikes and they've got that bit of a passion, well, you'll be right. If you can't do it yourself, try and get a mechanic that loves this older stuff and you'll be set. You know, I've really loved riding this bike, and it's put a smile on my face every time I've ridden it. But it also makes me sort of regret what I missed out on all those years ago. And for all the people that are getting back into this stuff, or maybe never got out of it, I really can see why they have the passion for them, because it keeps them young. Now, any of the late 80s 250 hero bikes like this is going to set you back pretty much at least $5,000 for a bike in this condition. And for that, you get a whole lot of fun for not a real lot of money, and a bike that's not going to go down in value anytime soon.